من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلوات الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد فيا أيها المسلمون وحدوا الله فإن التوحيد رأس الطاعات واتقوا الله فإن التقوى ملاك الحسنات وعليكم بالسنة فإن السنة تهدي إلى الإطاعة ومن أطاع الله ورسوله فقد رشد واهتدى وإياكم والبدعة فإن البدعة تهدي إلى المعصية ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل وغوى وعليكم بالصدق فإن الصدق ينجي والكذب يهلك وعليكم بالإحسان فإن الله يحب المحسنين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما يوفى الصابرون أجرهم بغير حساب. صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, indeed it is the great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we're all gathered here today for this Mubarak and this blessed occasion of Yawm al-Jum'ah, wherein a person is able to rejuvenate and refresh their iman and their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the past weeks, we have been talking about the significance of this month of Sha'ban. Now, as we draw nearer and closer to the month of Ramadan, there are several other things that we should keep in mind. And one of those things is that I want to talk about today, inshallah, is about patience, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in one hadith, he equates half of fasting as patience. He said, as-sawmu nisfu sabr. Fasting is half of patience. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam describes the fasting as. And due to the fact that the fast, the sawm itself is one of the pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam, this means that sabr and patience is something that is not to be taken lightly. It has a great significance and a great deal of importance is given to it in our deen and our religion. And why is that? Because nothing that we achieve in life can be achieved without patience. Right? There's not a single person that will achieve something great and will not have to go through difficulty, will not have to bear patiently through the different trials and tribulations. If a person is a student and wishes to achieve, for example, a diploma, how much of hours and effort does a person have to put into it? If a person wants to get into, for example, medical school, how much of effort is required there? If a person wants to ascend and wants to become politically, politically powerful or politically connected, if a person wants to become the president, the king, a person is, a prince, right? And anything and everything that they would like to achieve in life, right? If you explore it, right? If you look at it, if a person, for example, wants to achieve success in their business, if a person wants to achieve success in their, for example, marital life, everything requires sacrifice and everything requires patience. So this is one of the messages that we receive from the action of fasting and from every Ramadan, that we are introduced or reintroduced to this concept of patience. Because it is such, it is such a great quality that a person needs to inculcate within themselves, especially as believers, right? Through our deen, we are taught this great quality. We are taught how to navigate the different difficulties that humanity will face in their life here in this world. We're taught, right? Especially in cases where other people don't have answers. When they go through tragedy, you find people, have different coping mechanisms, right? You have people that, will go on the other end of the spectrum. A person will resort to alcohol. A person will resort to drugs. A person will resort to other addictive types of behavior because they're not able to cope with the hurt and the trauma that's there in their lives. Our deen teaches us. Our deen teaches us when to be patient, how to be patient, and why we are supposed to be patient. Right? Our deen teaches us إِنَّمَا الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ الصَّدَمَةِ الْأُولَى, that when a person is going through difficulty, the reality of patience manifests itself at the first sign of trouble, at the first instance of when you're in it. You know, you've gone off the deep end, and you are literally in such a bind that you cannot see another way out. You cannot see a way forward. This is when a person is supposed to exercise patience. Right? It's not that, oh, okay, you're forced to have patience. Like, for example, in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, we have been forced to, change our lifestyles. No matter how much we disliked it, we have been forced to stay indoors. We have been forced to, cut off our socializations. We have been forced to change our behavioral patterns as a society, as a community, as a family unit. So a person who goes through it and then complains about it, for example, that's the norm. That you know what I had to go through, you know what I did, When a person complains about it, it literally destroys the reward and the essence of patience. Because patience teaches us that we should not be complaining about things. Rather, we should be doing what we can and leaving the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because ultimately Allah controls everything. Allah controls every single thing. And what Ramadan teaches us there is that outside of the month of Ramadan, right, when we are living through life, when we are, everything is going normal, we're eating, we're drinking, everything is completely normal. One of the most difficult concepts to apply in our lives is the abstention from sins. People are more readily able to do good deeds rather than they are able to abstain from sins. And why is that? There's space, inshallah. Please come. Why is it that people are able to abstain from their sins? Why is it that people are more motivated to do good deeds rather than to abstain from sins? A scholar wonderfully said something, and he mentioned something beautiful. He said that when it comes to doing something good, when it comes to doing good deeds, a person more readily accepts that or is able to do that because there is some part of the nafs and the ego in it. When you do a good deed, a portion of your nafs and your ego is in it, right? Because when you do good deeds, it's a deed that you're performing, right? Physically. Other people are able to see it, right? And also at the same time, your nafs and your ego feels happy that, oh, you did something good, you're a good person. The nafs, kind of feels good about it, so it makes it easier for a person to do good deeds. But when it comes to staying away from sins, right? This is something that people, there's no showing off when it comes to this. Right? And that's why, like, for example, the ulama and the scholars, they said that when it comes to fulfilling the fard salah, the obligatory salah, there's no riyah, there's no showing off, because it is something that you have to do. It's something that you have to do, right? So what is the big deal about someone having to, for example, get up in the morning, having to brush their teeth and, dress and take a shower and all of these things? What's the big deal in that? What's so special about it? So when it comes to abstaining from sins, nobody sees it, right? There is no pleasure that the nafs receives in it. Rather, you are going against your nafs when you try to, safeguard yourself. You want to do something haram. You want to do something unlawful. But guess what? You stop yourself. You tell yourself that this is something that I don't want to do because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching me. Allah is watching my actions. Tomorrow, if I die and I have to stand before Allah, I'll have to give an answer for what I did, why I did it. So when a person is able to check themselves in that way, it is much more difficult. It is a more difficult endeavor for a person to abstain from their sins rather than to do, extra good deeds. Because good deeds is a surplus, right? Whereas perpetual sin is like a leaking bucket. A person will go on the one hand, doing good deed after good deed, good deed after good deed, but at the end of the day, they have a hole in their bucket, right? Water that's leaking out due to the sins that a person is committing. Then at the end of the day, how can a person be secure? You're just fooling yourself. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ said that, أَتَدْرُونَ مَنِ الْمُفْلِسِ? Do you know who's the biggest loser? That person who will come on the day of judgment with a lot of salah, with a lot of siyam, fasting, with a lot of zakah and sadaqah and other great, great deeds. And then at the end of the day, this person will become a loser because they committed so many other sins from the other side. Their sins will then basically cancel out everything good that they did. So what Ramadan teaches us, first and foremost, is that we're able to exercise and learn the exercise of patience, right? And that patience is particularly when it comes to that. The idea is that if a person can stay away from something that is halal normally, staying away from food and drink and other things in the month of Ramadan, then outside of the month of Ramadan, at least you can stay away from the haram. At least you can stay away from the haram. That is what the message is all about, right? Obviously, there's other benefits to it, that it gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It gets you the recognition of Allah. It brings you in that frame of mind that you need to be able to do something. But at the end of the day, a person can only benefit from such patience if they have a game plan, right? If you want to lose weight and you don't have a game plan, for example, you just think that one day you're going to walk into the gym and just bench press 350 pounds. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. A person needs to prepare themselves for difficulty, because that is the reality. We face difficulty every single day of our lives. If we can learn how to temper that difficulty, how to train ourselves to get through that difficulty, this is something that will benefit us. It's not like, for example, that we are people, when we go through difficulty, we're like the froth in the ocean. The waves take us from this place to that place, mindless, without any direction. A Muslim is not like that. A Muslim is a person that has a plan, that puts in place, things that they need to achieve. So coming back to the example of losing weight earlier, if a person understands that this is what I need to do in order to achieve optimal health in my body, I need to cut out desserts, I need to cut out sugar, I need to cut out, carbs and other things, whatever the case is. Right? When you are confronted by that, mashallah, that triple chocolate, cake that is there in front of you as a dessert, you need to question yourself that for me to be able to enjoy this and get a momentary, a pleasure that I will achieve from eating this, is this more important to me than my health, for example? And when a person weighs the perspectives, and when a person weighs the importance that is given to certain things, you are then able to, temper your nafs, you are able to temper your ego. And it's very, very hard, it's very difficult in the beginning. In the beginning, it's extremely difficult. The first few days are extremely difficult. But once a person is able to get into the habit, once a person is able to train themselves, that is when the barakat and the fuyud and the rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descend. Because you have to sacrifice something in order to get something. That's the concept. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have just given us one day of fasting. Why is it 30 days? Think about it. Why is it 30 days out of the whole year? And why is it consistent? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have split up the 30 days throughout the year. But it is a consistent 30 days. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew our situation, that we would be living, for example, in areas that have hot climates. We would have to go to school, we would have to work, we would have to go and you know, address the responsibilities that we have in life. And yet at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed fasting for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed the different, you know, worships for us. Because at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give us something good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes good for you and I. Allah is desirous to forgive us. Allah is desirous to be merciful towards us. And that is why Jannah is something that has been promised to the believers, to those people that will make that effort. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in one hadith, حُجِبَتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ وَحُجِبَتِ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. That Jannah, paradise, is something that has been covered with difficulty. Anything that you want to achieve, and something that's meaningful, something that's worth it, it is always going to be covered with difficulty. A person wants to get their driver's license, what do they have to do? First you have to pass your exam, then you have to pass the road test. And how much of time passes in between that? Right? Many people, they go for their first, you know, test, they fail the first time, second time, third time. But you keep on trying because you know how important it is for you. The same way, Jannah is important to all of us. How many of us here would not like to go to Jannah? How many of us here can raise their hands and say that, I don't want Jannah. It's okay, I'll make my Jannah here on this world. How many people can say that? But yet the reality is, حُجِبَتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ. Jannah has been surrounded with those things that are difficult. It is difficult sometimes to stay away from sins. It is difficult sometimes to carry out, you know, the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though our circumstances may be against us. But Allah rewards those people that try their best. And there is an intrinsic, you know, relationship that is there between the qualities that we're able to develop in the month of Ramadan and how it helps us throughout the rest of the year. There is an intrinsic spiritual connection. We shouldn't just take it for granted. Oh, this is just another Ramadan, right? This is, you know, no, every Ramadan is another opportunity to be better. It is another opportunity that could be a last opportunity for any one of us. Right? It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. How many of us can guarantee that we'll be alive to see the next Ramadan? How many of us can guarantee that we'll be alive to see this Ramadan? It is an opportunity and a reminder for all of us. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah gives us all the tawfiq and the ability, that we're able to, you know, adopt patience, we're able to adopt a plan in order to maximize from the month of Ramadan, in order to maximize from the rewards and the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the ability that we're able to better ourselves as human beings, right? As fathers, as sons, as daughters, as mothers, right? As family members, as members of society. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most importantly, allows us to improve ourselves when it comes to our deen. Because wallahi, our deen is the most important thing. Our deen is the most important thing. It's not about any type of success that we have in the life of this world. Ibn Khaldun, we've heard of him, right? The inventor of sociology. He mentions that, you know, he's one of the greatest historians in the history of history. You know, you should go and study his books. He says that it is a normative thing for example, empires to fall within 4 generations. It's a very normative thing. A period of about 80 to 100 years. Why? Because the people from the 4th generation no longer understand the sacrifices, and they no longer understand the struggles of what it took to establish this empire in the first place. Similarly for us, brothers and sisters, We didn't have to go through the difficulty of establishing, Islam, going through the difficulty, of compiling the Quran, going through the difficulty of living in remote areas or other parts of the world, where to have a Quran inside of our homes was akin to being arrested and akin to our entire families being put into a gulag, for example, and other camps and other prisons and other things like that. We didn't have to go through things like that. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave our deen to us, and we have access to it. We should appreciate it, we should value it, and we should avoid the pitfalls of other people, learn from the mistakes of others, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take work from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us the ability to improve and to become the best versions of ourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant me first and to grant all of us the tawfiq and the ability to practice upon whatever has been said. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، وأعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تبارك وتعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على عبدك محمد أفضل الخلق وأكرم الرسل. وارض اللهم عن خلفائه الراشدين المهديين أبو بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي رضي الله عنه. اللهم ارض عنهم وعن سائر الصحابة والتابعين وعنا معهم بمنك وكرمك يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداءك أعداء الدين. اللهم أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. اللهم اجعلنا من الراشدين واجعلنا من عبادك الصالحين واجعلنا من الذين لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا ضرا إلا كشفته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة هي لك رضا إلا قضيتها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله المستعتدل المستقيم. الله أكبر.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا
خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا قل لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فمن كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. وجاهدوا في الله حق جهاده هو اجتباكم وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج ملة أبيكم إبراهيم وسماكم المسلمين من قبل وفي هذا ليكون الرسول شهيدا عليكم وتكونوا شهداء على الناس فأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واعتصموا بالله هو مولاكم فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Dear respected brothers and elders, very important, inshallah. Next week, Friday evening, we have our Masjid groundbreaking ceremony, inshallah. So we need everyone, inshallah, to come and join us and participate, and also invite as many people as possible, so that this is a joyous occasion and a momentous occasion that is enjoyed and that is experienced by all members of our community and all throughout San Antonio, inshallah. Secondly, inshallah, we have